edit it, put it in layout, publish it, there it is. You don't need to go through the whole apparatus or marketing timeline that you do with books. It can be very quick. One of the things that we do is we'll use a zine instead of like an ARC, instead of an advanced reader copy for the book. We'll like take a chapter or two of a book or sometimes an outtake. We'll publish it as a zine before the book comes out and use that to sort of drum up interest, test cover and title development, test the market, essentially warm up the market for the book. And sometimes those zines have spun off into like other, like for instance, the Cat Party zine originated as 4 chapters, I think, of Cats I've Known, Katie Hageley's book. And then it spun off a whole series of Cat Party zines that she did where she got contributors. And there were like 8 or 10 of them. And then she did a Cat Party book, which I think is selling even better than Cats I've Known. Yeah. There's a zine success story for you.
And with better reviews, which is curious. But
it's weird.
So it goes.
I think Cats I've Known I think that's such a perfect book. Mm-hmm. But I guess I'm biased.
Everybody has an opinion, I suppose. Mm-hmm. Hi, I'm Joe Beal, the founder and CEO of Microcosm Publishing. I'm also the author of A People's Guide to Publishing, which distills what I've learned from selling millions of books over the past 28 years.
I'm Elly Blue, the vice president of Microcosm. We started this podcast to share what we've learned with newer publishers, so you can learn from our mistakes. Or maybe you just want to learn about the publishing industry.
This week, we answer a reader question.
Thanks, reader.
Which is B. What are zines, and how do they tie into our strategy?
What be zines sounds so Shakespearean.
So, yes,
I feel like you're uniquely qualified to answer the question, what are zines?
I did write a best-selling book on this subject.
It has maybe been your life's work.
That is probably also true. I would say, and people get really triangulated around the root words here when the actual answer is that zines are like writing a love letter about something that you're passionate about to a friend, but also, things that like you're excited about and knowledgeable about, but like it's of your own interest literally above all else. Like that's why you're doing it. And which is why I think they have similarities to books, because, like every good book is only written because the author is actually interested in the subject to that degree.
I would go further and say that zines are possibly the most granular and intense laser beam for a reader to gain information and perspectives that they otherwise would not find.
That you can read.
That can be read, yes.
Most laser beams only readable to a CD-ROM.
Yeah, I guess if it was an actual laser beam, that might cause you some eye problems.
Yeah, so be careful out there, readers. But
radio waves, they're everywhere.
And for our new conspiratorial tone, we have entered the Twilight Zone. So, yeah, a couple things to that point. So, a zine, it tends to be, but is not always, shorter than a book. And it tends to be a little bit more personal in tone and a little bit more intimate as a result. And, it's interesting because sometimes it assumes that the reader has a high level of knowledge, and sometimes it assumes that the reader has less knowledge than they do. Like, unbelievably so. And so it's kind of doing a lot of things. Like, it's both simultaneously like introducing you to a topic, it's like telling you how to feel about a topic, it's stretching maybe the facts of a topic, maybe not dissimilarly from how a book does that. But, when it's done well, it introduces you to a new topic that you're like, oh, that's actually really cool. I'm interested in that. Like, I want to know more about that, because it's unformidable, meaning like it doesn't feel like homework. It feels more fun. It feels less challenging. And the weird roundabout aspect of that I didn't count on when I approached down this path is that people will buy like a stack of them. They'll get 10 or 20 different ones rather than, buying a book.
And of very different topics. It's really fun to read our like incoming orders page when people order zines.
Yeah, because they're like all over the place,
So here's how I think of it. Zines are like lower overhead than publishing a book and less risk than writing a blog post.
Yeah, and that's a good point too. Yeah, because a lot of it, and there's like science to back this up. The big difference is that your reader is more sympathetic to your point of view, whereas when you're reading a blog post, the brain is already in like an antagonistic fight or flight mode that it has trouble getting out of. So it's trying to find anything to disagree with rather than finding things to agree with like it does when you're reading on paper.
Or to just be like, oh, this is this person's perspective. That's a very hard attitude to have when you're reading something online.
Or anywhere. But, right.
A little easier in a zine, though, because, I don't know, I guess your brain science.
Letting someone have their opinions.
I mean, you can't immediately respond as easily.
Though we do get some where people really do feel the need to type out their how this is wrong response, but...
We have one zine particularly about tarot, which is very popular and also very controversial. Possibly our most controversial zine.
Probably. Oh, wow. Big words, Elly.
People really care about, like, how they interpret, what they interpret swords to mean.
Yes. So that's a big one. Part of it, too, is the other reality is that anytime anything is popular, it will also be simultaneously unpopular. Mm-hmm. Anything that finds its audience will also very much find the people who are not its audience.
I guess that is like a statistical reality, yes, of success.
And I think it really comes down to the big data science we got last year, which was that most book referrals come from friends and family that you trust, not based on your actual compatibility of interests or tastes with that person. But
I was just reading a great talk by Kathy Sierra on YouTube. It's called something like How to Reach Your Passionate Users or How to Create Passionate Users. And she was saying that like people will mostly buy books based on not what's in the book or not based on the author, but how the book makes them feel about themselves. Mm-hmm. And zines, like, how do zines make you feel about yourself?
They make you feel like you're more knowledgeable about a topic, whether that topic is shoes or, like 80s video games or like, a social movement or like, this is very embarrassing, but I learned a lot of U.S. history that way enough to like read more about it because I was like, oh, that's actually really interesting and like I feel like I should know about this stuff.
Would you say that zines are most like podcasts?
Podcasts have this is horrific to say, but podcasts have a significantly bigger budget. And
fair enough.
Podcasts are weirdly now where like you can get funding to do a researched deep dive on a topic, whereas like a zine is similar in tone, but has no budget. It's just driven on the passion of the person writing it. And, it obviously the bar is lower for entry, so that's part of it too. But to the second part of our question, our strategy with zines is that we want them to essentially, for something, it's twofold, two different ways. Sometimes we want it to sort of taste test if our audience will go for a topic, and if so, how much. Like we've done a number of new publications where we were like, we could do this. It seems a stretch that hundreds of people would read this, let alone thousands, but then sometimes we're wrong. Sometimes we're right. Sometimes we're very wrong. And then the other part of the time is it's just like there's a lot of topics where there's just not a book's length of work to say. Yeah. So you end up having to do that terrible thing where you...
add filler.
Yeah, you just repeat yourself and talk about stuff unrelated to the book and like pad out the 3 takeaways with 200 pages of surplus material, and that's just it's not a good look. It's not a good read. It's so what we do instead is we're like, okay, this is a way where we can make something that's like super cheap. Like we make them now. New zines that we produce are $7.99, and and they'll have like a designed color cover, and they'll have an editor that'll go through it with the author and draw them out, and you're getting the information you would get. And and this has been said of us over and over, that they contain more information than the $20 or $30 book that is quite a bit longer. So that's part of it. And then part of it too is just like in some cases where we're like, oh wow, people are really into this. Like we have one that's about being an Indigenous ally, and that's been really well received. So we went back to the author and we were like, do you have more to say? Do you have other stuff you want to make?
It's called Everyone Calls Themselves an Ally Until It's Time to Do Real Ally Shit.
The new one is called, they use appropriator.
Ooh.
As the, so it's a similar variation. Instead of being an ally, you're like tapping into culture and doing stuff like that. So, and it's cool. And they have a third one on the way too. So we'll have a number of things. But, so that's not something that we would have necessarily seen because 20 or 30 years ago, things like that were very marginal, And so, we did it because it was cool and interesting and the person approached us. Whereas nowadays we would do it because we're like, oh, okay, it's cool, and people are very interested in it, and we have the data to back that up. You could publish books the same way. It's just like the stakes are a lot higher because you've sunk so much money into it, whereas the costs of entry are very low here.
Yeah, like with a zine, you can start out printing like literally as few copies as you want. You photocopy them, so you can print 20 copies, give them away, see what people think, print 100 copies.
Thanks for joining us once again.
Please send your questions to podcast@microcosmpublishing.com so we can answer them on future episodes.
And please give us 5 stars on iTunes and everywhere else that podcasts are reviewed.
You can find us on the internet at microcosm.pub.
On Twitter at microcosm.
On Facebook at Microcosm Publishing.
On Instagram at microcosm_pub.
And here in Portland, Oregon on North Williams Avenue.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful week.